Hello there, I'm Craig Watson. Welcome back to the Pacific War channel, where we cover the entire history of the Asia-Pacific War of 1937 all the way up to 1945 and all the major events that led up to it. Today we're beginning a series looking into the Japanese invasion of North China and Inner Mongolia. Now if you've not already done so, please hit that like and subscribe button, as it helps this small but growing channel. But, stating all of that, let's just jump right into it. This is the battle for the Great Wall of China. The Japanese had performed another false flag operation on January the 1st of 1933, this time at the Shanhaiguan Pass. After this, the Japanese forces invaded Rehe province, quickly overwhelming the forces of Zhang Shuliang. They seized all of the significant cities in Rehe, as the Chinese forces surrendered or withdrew, taking up positions in the south along the Great Wall and in northern Hubei province. At this point, Chiang Kai-shek held discussions with Zhang Shuliang and Baoding about the resistance efforts against the Japanese in the northeast. Chiang Kai-shek notified him he was relocating his forces away from the northeast to deal with communist insurgents in Jiangxi province. It was at this point Chiang Kai-shek suggested Zhang Shuliang should step down as leader of the northeastern forces. Thus, on March the 12th, Zhang Shuliang resigned for medical reasons, appointing the current Minister of Military and Political Affairs, Hu Yingqin, in his place. A major issue Hu Yingqin would face would be a lack of assistance from Chiang Kai-shek. The North China forces defending the Great Wall lacked men, they lacked training, they had inferior equipment to the Japanese, and they had no effective armored vehicles or aircraft support. Hu Yingqin would repeatedly call upon Chiang Kai-shek asking for more reinforcements and to increase financial subsidies to facilitate the Northern War. However, Chiang Kai-shek insisted not to increase troops in North China, and instead, he forced the Central Chinese armies to perform a communist suppression campaign. In truth, Chiang Kai-shek and other Kuomintang leaders understood they could not hope to face the Japanese. They were placing all of their faith in performing a light resistance, hoping the Japanese might not escalate things into a full-blown war. Hey guys, this is Craig from the Pacific War channel. Please don't forget to check out my YouTube membership or my Patreon account over at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel, where you can join the ranks and gain access to a hell of a lot of goodies. At the base minimum, you get access to the exclusive monthly podcast, early access to all of my content, voting rights for what subjects I will tackle next, and at higher tiers I have much more goodies to come, so please click that link and check it out. After seizing Rehe province, the Japanese army advanced within the vicinity of various entrances along the Great Wall. The Japanese army was led by Field Marshal Baron Nobuyushimoto and his Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Kunaki Kosho. The army consisted of 100,000 men of the 6th and 8th Divisions, with the 14th and 33rd Mixed Brigades, the 4th Cavalry Brigade, and the 1st Special Tank Company. They would also be supported by 42,000 Manchukuoan forces. These were men of the Tailiao Army of General Zhang Haipeng and the National Protection Army of Yu Jishen. With his new appointment as commander of the North China forces, Hu Yingqin deployed his first army of General Yu Shizhong to defend Tianjin, the Dagu forts, and the Jinpu Railway. General Shan Chen's second army was deployed due east of the Rehe River near Lengkou, General Song Juyong's third army to Xifengkou, General Wan Fulin's fourth army to take the Qi Pass east of the Great Wall, east of Lengkou, the remnants of General Tang Yulin, Jiang Songshang, and Fu Zoyi's 5th, 6th, and 7th armies to Chadong, and General Yang Jie's 8th army to Gubeikou. The battles for Gubeikou and Nantiamen would be the longest and involve the most troops from both the Japanese and the Chinese. On March the 4th, the Japanese 8th Division occupying Chengdu began an advance against Hongtuliang. In order to block their advance, the Chinese 107th Division departed Gubeikou and took up a position near Qingshuliang. They were soon followed by the 112th Division as the 3rd Cavalry Division went to Baimaoquan, and General Yang Jie concentrated his forces around Tong County. By the time the 107th Division reached Qingshuliang, it had already been captured by the enemy. They instead engaged the Japanese 8th Division near Huangtuliang. The 107th Division quickly suffered heavy casualties, and expending nearly all of their ammunition, they were forced to retreat back to Gubeikou by March the 9th. Meanwhile, the 112th Division set up defenses between Jiangchunlo, Miwopu, and Erdagou near Gubeikou. On the 9th, the Japanese 8th Division began to attack their positions under the cover of artillery and aerial bombardment. The 112th fought until the 10th, whereupon they were forced to withdraw to Nantiamen. At this point, Hu Yingqin desperately ordered the 25th Division to rush north to Gubeikou to help defend it against an imminent attack. The 25th Division arrived at Gubeikou on the morning of the 10th, deploying their 73rd Brigade west of Gubeikou and their 75th Brigade to Huangdaojian. At 3 p.m., the Japanese 8th Division reconnaissance began probing the area under an artillery bombardment. By dawn the next day, the full brunt of the 8th Division began their attack. The 112th Division lasted until about 10 a.m., whence they were forced to withdraw. The Japanese quickly occupied Gubeikou's pass and exploited their gain to encircle the nearby 25th Division. The 73rd Brigade was isolated into a pocket and began sending frantic requests for the 75th Brigade to come rescue them. The 75th Brigade, en route to do so, ran straight into the Japanese near the east pass of Gubeikou, seeing both sides fight hand-to-hand combat. The Chinese were able to dislodge the Japanese from part of the pass momentarily, but by 4 p.m. on the 12th, the Japanese launched a counterattack. The 75th Brigade were forced to withdraw to Nantiamen, as the Japanese secured Gubeikou and forced the surrender of the 73rd Brigade. Despite taking the pass, the Japanese 8th Division had taken moderate casualties and thus halted to allow reinforcements to build up. Likewise, the Chinese took the opportunity to build up their defenses at Nantiamen and Qinglong. The Nantiamen position consisted of Huangshiliang on the Chaohe River to the right, and to the left was the 8 towers of the Great Wall. 6 positions consisting of strongholds were between these points, providing a defense in depth. On April the 16th, Japanese aircraft began bombing Nantiamen, Huangtuliang, and Battle. On the 20th, the Japanese 16th Brigade attacked Battle, Huangtuliang, and Nantiamen. The Chinese fortifications were left in ruins by over 3,000 artillery shells and aerial bombs dropped upon them. The Chinese defenders were using the high terrain to their advantage, however, but the Japanese had bribed some Chinese to lead them on a hidden path into the mountains to perform a surprise attack against the left wing of Nantiamen. 3,000 Japanese launched a surprise attack under the cover of aircraft as they stormed the 8 watchtowers. The next day, the Chinese 6th Brigade of the 2nd Division launched a counterattack. The Japanese utilized the watchtowers to easily repel them. The Chinese then dispatched the 7th and 11th Regiments to continue their counterattack, yet this only amounted to 1,500 casualties. The 2nd Division by this point had suffered more than 6,000 casualties. The Japanese quickly captured Battle and began pulling their artillery closer to Nantiamen. On the 24th, the Japanese attacked the highland central stronghold of Nantiamen, supported by artillery, tanks, and aircraft. The Chinese 2nd Division would fight them off for over 5 days, suffering extremely high casualties. Then the Chinese 83rd Division came over to take their position, as the 25th Division took the right wing position of Nantiamen. On the 26th, the Japanese concentrated their forces further upon the central heights of Nantiamen. The Japanese artillery razed the remaining highland fortifications as the infantry and tanks stormed forward. The 83rd Division held on until the evening of the 28th, but after 7 bloody days of battle, the Japanese finally took Nantiamen, though at a significant cost. Meanwhile, during the intense battle at Gubeikou, the Japanese detached the 3rd Battalion alongside 5,000 Manchukuoian troops to attack Xinglong. On the 20th, they ran into the Chinese 5th Cavalry Division, skirmishing before the Chinese pulled away. On the 21st, the Japanese occupied Xinglong, and by the 24th, they had sent forces to perform reconnaissance around Nantiamen. The Chinese reacted by ordering Major Generals Xiao Jichu and Li Fuhu of the 26th and 5th Cavalry Divisions to launch a counterattack. Both forces converged against the Japanese by 2 a.m. on the 27th. However, the Japanese had fortified their positions. As the Chinese attacked their positions, Japanese aircraft began to bomb them continuously, as they had no fortified positions to fall back to. Thus they were caught out in the open. By the 29th, after thousands of casualties, Hu Yingqin ordered the Chinese forces to pull out of Battle, Nantiamen, and the Xinglong area. Now they would take up positions along the other parts of the Great Wall. Xifengkou is a pass on the Great Wall. Outside of it are towering peaks, making it quite dangerous to traverse. To the left of Xifengkou is Panjiakou and the Rehe River that straddles the Great Wall. Over to its right is Tianmenguan and Dongqiakou. Part of the Japanese 14th Mixed Brigade arrived outside Xifengkou on March the 9th. They began attacking General Wan Fulin's 4th Army in the area. The defenders collapsed at the very offset as the Japanese seized part of the Xifengkou Pass. The Chinese 4th Army were reinforced with the 109th Brigade of the 3rd Army, who counterattacked, and through a series of hand-to-hand battles reclaimed the heights. On the 10th, another battle broke out from opposite sides of the pass. The Japanese stormed Xifengkou under artillery cover and overwhelmed the Chinese, though taking heavy casualties themselves. Then the 109th, 110th, and 113th Chinese regiments assembled a special Dadao broadsword unit. As the name implies, they were armed with Dadao broadswords, C-96 Mauser pistols, and grenades. They performed a night raid, coming upon the Japanese military camp from two different directions. They caught most of the Japanese while they were still sleeping, hacking and tossing grenades into tents. The carnage went on till 4 a.m., seeing brutal hand-to-hand fighting as the Chinese occupied tent strongholds. The Chinese claimed 1,000 Japanese soldiers were killed and injured, and 11 tanks, 6 armored vehicles, 18 cannons, and 36 machine guns were seized. It was further alleged that henceforth the Japanese became so terrified of such nightly attacks, they began to tie iron rings around their necks while sleeping to prevent their heads from being chopped off. The Chinese now held most of Xifengkou, prompting the Japanese 14th Mixed Brigade to urgently request reinforcements. Muto ordered the 6th Division and the 33rd Mixed Brigade to advance from Chifeng. Meanwhile, the Japanese 8th Division detached the 4th Brigade and the 8th Cavalry Regiment with 2 Manchukuo brigades to the Luowenyu Valley. Altogether, they amounted to 10,000 men, 10 armored vehicles, and 20 aircraft. Luowenyu is 50 kilometers southwest of Xifengkou, wielding numerous watchtowers of the Great Wall. If the Japanese could capture Luowenyu, it would threaten the Chinese position at Xifengkou, as well as Zunhua, and would cut off the Chinese forces in Peiping. On the 14th, the Japanese approached the Luowenyu Valley as the 219th, 224th, and 228th regiments converged to meet them. On the 16th, the Japanese troops were advancing south from Shillong, where they were halted by Chinese, fighting until 9 p.m. once the Japanese were forced to pull back. On the 17th, the Japanese attacked the Luowenyu Valley under artillery support and with their 20 aircraft. The Chinese resisted, holding them off for an entire day. On the 18th, the Chinese launched a frontal attack, inflicting 1,700 casualties, but suffering nearly 3,000 casualties themselves. During the night, one of the Chinese regiments raided the Japanese rear lines, forcing the Japanese away from Xifengkou. However, while the Japanese did pull back, this also opened a path to Luandong. Back on the 19th, the Japanese 14th Mixed Brigade concentrated its forces and launched an attack against Lengkou. The 139th Division withstood their attack and tossed multiple counterattacks, driving the Japanese 10 kilometers outside the mouth of the pass by the 22nd. On the 23rd, the Japanese 6th Division and the 33rd Mixed Brigade arrived in the area north of Xifengkou, and Lengkou adding their weight to the attack. On the 27th, Muto ordered an all-out offensive against each entrance of the Great Wall, then for the forces to cross the Great Wall to attack the Liaodong area. Days upon days of seesaw battles took place, but by April the 8th, the Japanese launched a furious attack against Lengkou. 300 to 400 Japanese assaulted Liujiaokou in the north under artillery cover, but they were repelled. On the 9th, the Japanese 6th Division and the 14th Mixed Brigade launched another fierce attack against Lengkou, seizing the Baili Mountain Pass, forcing the Chinese to retreat to the west bank of the Luanhe River. The Japanese occupied the Lengkou Pass on the 11th and began spreading out to attack Jielingkou and Yiyuankou. The Japanese 33rd Mixed Brigade attacked Jielingkou, defended by the 116th Division, quickly overwhelming them with combined arms, forcing their retreat. Yiyuankou was defended by a regiment of the 116th Division, and thus it was brushed aside by the Japanese by April the 21st. After the Japanese seized the Lengkou Pass, Chiang Kai-shek sought support from the League of Nations to intervene and stop the Japanese aggression. However, Britain, France, and the United States were unwilling to get involved, some arguing Japan's traditional sphere of influence was northeastern China. The British and American navies began landing at Tangshan and Qinghongdao in eastern Hubei province to evacuate their citizens in the area. Although Japan had walked out in the League of Nations, she did not want any conflict with Western powers like Britain or the United States. Thus, on April the 19th, Emperor Hirohito urged the military to stop the attack upon Liaodong. On the 21st, Japanese forces were forced to withdraw, despite the fact the 6th Division had already entered Liaodong. By the end of April, the Chinese wrestled Liaodong back from the Japanese. The situation was extremely dire for China, yet the Japanese were also in a sticky situation of their own. They had walked out in the League of Nations, effectively isolating themselves from the other international powers. Emperor Hirohito had forbade going past the Great Wall, and he was now furiously demanding they stop and conclude the operation. Thus, the Japanese asked to open up peace talks on May the 22nd at Tanggu. The Japanese demands were severe. They wanted to create a demilitarized zone extending 100 kilometers south of the Great Wall, from Beijing to Tianjin, for the Great Wall to be under their control. for no Kuomintang military units to be allowed in the demilitarized zone, as it would instead be maintained by a lightly armed Peace Preservation Corps. Chiang Kai-shek was in a real bind. His military could not hope to face the Japanese, and they were currently stuck in a civil war with the CCP. Thus Chiang Kai-shek was forced to sign the terms on May the 31st. The Treaty of Tanggu de facto resulted in the Kuomintang's recognition of Manchukuo, the loss of Rehe province, and over 22 counties in northern Hubei. The Japanese would only report suffering 2,400 casualties during the operation, but this figure was clearly false, as at the Battle of Gubeikou alone, thousands of Japanese had perished, but the figures were much even higher. For the Chinese, the casualties had reached nearly 40,000. Chiang Kai-shek would use this time to quell the communist threat within his borders so he could consolidate a military capable of pushing the Japanese back. The Tanggu Treaty provided a temporary end to the conflict, but Japan was nowhere near done with their conquests. Hey, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and please check out my YouTube membership or my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel, where you get access to the exclusive podcast, early access to all the content I make, and voting rights for the subjects I will tackle next. Amongst that, there's other goodies for you YouTube members. And this has been the Pacific War Channel, over and out.